Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Christina Fox, and I'm the CEO of TechAlliance. As the Regional Innovation Center for Southwestern Ontario, TechAlliance is committed to people who have big hopes, big dreams, and see big opportunities. We are the place for dreamers, innovators, and world-changing ideas, and we're focused on building a globally competitive innovation economy that enables entrepreneurship, spurs accelerated growth, and attracts ambitious talent and new companies. So before we get started, let me share a few key points. Everyone on this call today is muted, and today's Fireside Chat will be recorded and available afterwards. We'll send it out in our thank you note. Feel free to add any questions to the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be sure to make time for them because after all, this is a chat. If you'd like to keep up with everything there is to know about Southwestern Ontario's innovation economy, sign up for our weekly newsletter and we'll drop that link in the chat bar as well. So please join me in welcoming members of our board of directors, Anna Fote, the Director of Global Digital Transformation Office at Sun Life Financial, and Mike Schmalz, the President of Digital Extremes. Anna loves the power of possibility and the passion of entrepreneurs. She's worked at a startup, grown with one of the most famous Canadian scale-ups, and now works for a major financial services firm in Canada, advising the Chief Transformation Officer on digital transformation. She earned a BA in English Literature from the University of Waterloo and now teaches design thinking at Western. Welcome, Anna.
Welcome, Christina. It's so great to be here this morning. And your lead-in music, I was swaying, listening to Stand By Me.
Amazing. So Mike Schmalz is the president of Digital Extremes, a top development studio in the interactive entertainment industry. Mike has more than a decade of experience in digital media industry, focusing his attention on innovation in the gaming sector. Prior to that, Mike practiced as a civil engineer, and he holds several degrees, including a PhD, a master's in engineering science from Western University, and has his MBA from Schulich School of Business. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Amazing. So of course, we have a common belief between our board and our staff, our entrepreneurs and residents, and the entire technology community that in pursuit of creating spaces where innovation thrives, we need to have conversations like these with all of you. So in this final Fireside Chat with our Board of Directors series, we're fortunate enough to have two innovative economy leaders who are here to reframe adversity as an advantage and the need to embrace change and gain insights when tackling transformation. So here we go. Bunch of questions that we've got prepared, as well as the Q&A chat. We'll take a look at that as we go through. So when we start by looking at the idea of that despite so many things that are in flux, there is still a very basic human desire to keep things the way they are, even more so in times of change. So we're on the cusp of the new normal. However, transformation does require someone or something to change or need to be changed. With that in mind, I'm going to start by asking the first question of you, Anna. What are the barriers to and the levers by which inertia can be broken so change can actually emerge?
Sure. I mean, it's such a natural instinct to try to cling to the past and try to kind of disbelieve the possibility of the future. But I think, you know, the upside of COVID is we've done transformations in industries in the last 6 months that would have taken 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, the lesson that we can take from it is, you know, we need leaders to be very clear about an outcome. And that's sometimes in non-pandemic times easy to gloss over. You know, you have these PowerPoints, they all look lovely. They don't really say a whole heck of a lot. And it leaves employees kind of wondering what it is that they're actually being asked to do. So I think leaders need to be really clear about the one thing that they want their staff, or three things, a small number, to focus on. But then the flip of that is employees need to work in an environment where there's a level of psychological safety where they can raise their hand and offer suggestions. So it's kind of this two-way street. If you have employees that feel really comfortable raising ideas and opinions, but a leadership that kind of quashes everything or isn't clear, doesn't work. But if you don't have really clear direction, then lots of really smart people are running around scrambling, looking at each other saying, what is it that we're actually supposed to do? So I kind of think of it like the difference between, you know, the rules were created for a reason. This culture of, well, there's a process and smarter people than me kind of came up with this process, to more of a culture and a mood like, I need to understand why the rules exist, so that, you know, I might be able to break them, or I want to understand if I make this change to a process, what the impact will be, to give people permission to make the changes. So I really think the tension points on both sides. Leaders need to be clear and people need to be empowered. And that's hard, especially in conservative industries or ones that have been reluctant to change. It's a new muscle.
Awesome. Okay. Mike, so how is your environment and how are your opportunities changing? And do you find that your transformation is fast or slow?
Yeah, there are two types of transformation, and I think they're very distinct. There's the ongoing transformation that I think every business should be plugged into and aware of. And then there's, which I would call small transformation or iteration. And then there's big transformation, and those are prompted by changes in your business environment. It might be a particular technology or a particular threat or a particular opportunity which cause you to look at what you're doing and how you're doing it in a different way. Each requires, I think, a really strong culture where both the leadership as well as the staff understand what's at stake here. And not only that, is that the incentives have to exist, I think, across the entire organization so that people understand that, you know, if I embrace change, I'm not going to be punished for it if it doesn't succeed. And in my view, there's no all or nothing sort of transformation. It's usually somewhere in the middle. It usually doesn't fail tremendously and it usually doesn't succeed tremendously. But people need to know that they can offer suggestions or do things differently and they won't be punished for that. But the other side is that they also need to know that if they do step up, that there will be rewards for doing that, and that there is an expectation. And once you have that, along with you know, a self-awareness of what the issues are that face a business that exists both at the leadership and the staff level, I think then you can have the opportunity for you know, for positive change. But I do see change in general, transformation in general, as primarily an HR, human resources issue. It's not like, oh, we just got a new piece of technology, let's figure out how to integrate that into our company. It's like, let's figure out whether this is a good fit and how well the organization can adapt it and benefit from it.
I think the answer that you just gave, Mike, as well as Anna, you've both sort of had a blend there of people and culture, and that, you know, demonstration of leadership and creating safety, psychological safety for the team to put up their hand and to be okay to succeed or to experience failure, and that, you know, it's a greater opportunity in tackling transformation for there to be ideas from a number of different places, but that there's a bit of a North Star on, like, where is this taking us? Is this attached to our bigger purpose? Is this attached to the mandate that we have? So I love that both of you, each with sort of different questions, really brought it back to the people, the culture of the workplace, and transformation happens, you know, when there's a space and an opportunity for people to succeed in raising their hand and connecting with others to make things happen. Are there any more comments that you have then related to people, to culture and transformation that you wanted to add before I move to another question about system thinking?
I just say sometimes, you know, the unexpected good upside of changing your culture is you start to recruit or retain those folks that have always been difficult. So people are always worried about the risks of change, but sometimes there's this massive upside where people that kind of are watching, people are always watching what companies are doing. And, you know, ooh, I see that they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. I want to get in that boat and I want to row the same way they're going. So I think, you know, people underestimate how much other people are paying attention to the real stuff that's going on.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Anna. So I'm gonna shift to you for this next question. So system thinking is often in short supply, and change often has wide-reaching and sometimes unintended consequences. So how do we de-silo the people that we need to in order to collaborate together and to start thinking about things more broadly, to avoid incrementalism and to really start seeing bigger dividends paid for the risks that are taken?
I think people need to be curious about things that they don't know about. So one of the major Canadian banks had an innovation lab, and I spoke to one of the executives in Toronto and said, you know, I know some of the people in the lab and kind of what's going on in the lab. I'm really excited to hear what you think of it, because he was very much a corporate IT guy. And he said, nothing's going on there. And I said, what do you mean? I said, that's not true. I've seen their wireframes. They're doing stuff. And he kind of, and I'll never forget how succinctly he put it. He kind of said, yes, they're doing interesting things, but they are not interested fundamentally in the core mission of the bank. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, they don't understand how we make money, and they don't understand how our systems of record work. And yes, they're not sexy. And yes, you know, it's complicated. But I think the more people can get curious or make friends with people that know things that they don't know at all, the more you actually get this view of how these things interoperate with one another. If you kind of do your job and you're narrowly focused on your job, it's really easy for you to not appreciate like how your cog fits into the entire wheel. So I think constantly seeking things that you don't know. I mean, you know, Mike, I always love hanging out with the developers because I just listen. It's not my world, right? And I'm always fascinated with how they think through a problem or how they conceptualize how they're going to work. So I think the more you can make yourself comfortably uncomfortable, stepping out of your comfort zone, the more you see all the pieces in the puzzle.
Yeah, I would say like, and even to acknowledge the curious cats. You know, I find I'm the kind of person that will ask a million questions, not because I'm trying to make a point necessarily, but that I'm actually just rather curious. And that when people sort of unlock, you know, the secrets to their world and talk about how it is that the work that they do really attaches itself to the larger vision, that to me is rather outstanding. And that is the way to de-silo organizations, big or small. And, you know, to understand the person that works, you know, a couple rows over from me or on a different floor, what are they doing that's related to the work that I'm doing, and trying to understand and be, you know, seated in the role of others. I love that you even call out developers, because, you know, if we're not practitioners in a particular craft, it might be hard to understand. But when you lead your day with questions, it really has the opportunity to transform and there to be greater attachment between others. So Mike, do you see that as well when you think of sort of incrementalism or really transformative change, that it requires some of that curiosity? Do you know of any other pieces to either personality characteristics, roles, and team makeup that you think also supports that kind of transformation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think personality is a key part of it. And I think in general, if you're in a company that's in a dynamic industry, say pretty much any tech company, you're really looking for a certain type of a person to fill whatever spot that might be open, whether it's a marketing or a development or whatever. And that definitely should have curiosity. I think that we kind of benefit from the fact that many of the people that would want to come and work for us are really much interested in the whole, but we have so many specialized jobs that you know, we actually tell people focus on you doing your particular part of that job really well. But when it comes to pulling it back to the big picture, I think a lot of people are always looking at, you know, what's our next big update going to be, and taking pride in what the team has accomplished and how it comes together. So that's a bit of a benefit for us, as opposed to say a bank or an insurance company, where you can kind of lose track of what that is. But I would say that no matter what your business is, you want people there who are curious about doing things better, achieving whatever mission that you are on, but only, you know, doing it more efficiently, doing it better, being proud of the people that they work with, the company that they work for, the service or the product that they're offering, and that any structural impediments that disassociate that connectivity with the whole is going to eventually start to tear away at the culture that we were describing. But it's also going to eventually create disengaged people. And that's something that certainly every tech company, I'd say every company, should be on the lookout for, because my experience is that if you've got you know, that the HR term is highly engaged or in the middle, and then they go to the disengaged people. If you have a significant percentage of your workforce that are in that category, any change is impossible. And the fact is that they're probably, those disengaged people are probably working against your mandate or working against the corporation. And even what they are doing of what you're asking them to do, they're probably working at, from my experience, literally less than 0.25% efficiency over someone who is actually trying to solve his own problems, trying to think of better ways to do it, and not just say, well, someone told me to do this and they told me to do it this way, so I'm going to check it in, and at the end of the day, I've done what I'm told and it's all good. That's death.
Yeah.
And you should always be looking for, you know, people who are starting to show those sort of characteristics of, just tell me what to do, I don't care, I'll get it done. That's not going to help your company succeed.
Yeah. Anything more to add to that, Anna? Even the piece of like, how do we, you know, understand the environment in which we need to be creating in organizations to really be able to know that bigger dividends are going to pay off for any risks taken. Anything more to add to that?
You know, so much of what Mike said resonated with me because I kind of came from that, you know, you get on the bus, the people that want to kind of run, let's go sprint, and everyone else, I don't really care what you are or not doing because I'm kind of singularly focused on this thing that we're doing together. And it's hard in a big company. It's harder because, you know, some of my colleagues at Sun Life said, how have you done it in other places? And I said, well, it just wouldn't fly with the culture of Sun Life. They just weren't invited. Like, if you are cancerous to a deliverable, you are not part of the deliverable, the end. Like, but in a big company, you kind of can't do that. Everyone kind of sings Kumbaya. And, you know, there's this example that one of the guys that I'm doing a bunch of work with, who's great, I said, you know, we got to get people on the bus. And he said, yeah, but Anna, here's the thing. There's going to be spectators. They're just going to stand on the sidelines, kind of watch what you're doing in the bus, kind of curious, but definitely don't want to get on the bus. But to Mike's point, you got to watch the hecklers. There's going to be a bunch of people throwing tomatoes at the bus. So, you know, you have to try to mitigate the people throwing tomatoes. You got to kind of ignore the spectators. And sometimes it's really hard. I mean, it's hard in a big company when you don't have a lot of air cover and there's a lot less psychological safety, because some of these projects are 5-year projects that have gone to like the highest echelons of the company. And I keep trying to remind people internally that the ceremony and the gravitas around those sorts of projects actually make it really difficult for even people that are bold, let's say 4 months into the project, to raise their hand and say, I don't think this is going to work, not because they're a negative Nancy, because they see the future and they see some of the problems. They kind of put their head down and go, my boss's boss's boss went to their boss to get permission. So far be it for me to, you know, to call BS on any of this. Obviously, smarter people than me have vetted it. So I'll just put my head down and, to Mike's point, check the box, like do the thing that's being asked of me. And it's amazing to me when you do these postmortems and then you ask people that were doing the work, when did you know this was going to go horribly wrong? They all know, and they all know very early in the process. And the reason that they don't stick up their hand are varied, but they all know. So if you just go to the people doing the work, they know if you give them the space to tell you the truth.
Wow. There's a question that's come in on the Q&A, and it's really closely related to some of this discussion. And it really talks about, you know, what is to speak to the role of leadership and encouraging the time and space and opportunity for staff to be perhaps curious people, versus it being thought of as like there's somebody over there chit-chatting and wasting away their time. Instead, it's this human connection that is so necessary in transformation. Can you speak to any specific ways that you have led your team or led your leaders to encourage the time and space for that? Or is it is there physical space within your workplaces or workplaces that you've been in that allow that and encourage that? Or is there ways that you have cross-functional teams that really change and provide exposure in ways that there's some natural inclination to learn about and explore other areas of business? Just who would like to take that? Anna or Mike? Mike, maybe you'd like to start with that? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of collaboration is I think going to be a little bit challenged as many people are looking at now much more seriously work from home options for the future. And I think that that's a trend that we're all going to have to really considerably work hard at finding different ways of integrating that into the future, whether it's none or some or many or all of the staff. Just years ago, when we first moved to London, we moved into an office, and we didn't have a lot of money for renovations. And it was a really kind of nice office on Fullerton Street. But it had a lot of walls and a lot of existing offices. It was formerly, I think, an accountant or a lawyer space. So we were kind of like, oh, all these fixtures are really nice, but it's mostly made up of small little offices that we could fit 2, maybe 3 people into, and most of our staff were in those sort of environments. And the issues in terms of just coordination and communication, we didn't really realize it at the time. But there were just always problems crossing our desk, and it wasn't usually technical problems. It was just someone had a conversation and someone else didn't hear about it, and they felt that they were being left out, and their opinions aren't valued. Basically, as of the last, I suppose, 7 or 8 years, we moved into a space where it's wide open, and if there are little conversations being held, you can hear them, you can see them, you can step up, and there's no secret meetings, and there's no things going on behind closed doors. So whenever I see people chatting, I never consider it a waste of time. And even if they're not talking about the particular task that they have at hand, they're understanding each other, they're forming relationships, so that when they do have a need to speak to each other about work-related things, that they know that they can do that. So those sort of collaborations, I think, are super, super important. And unless of course they're sitting there for 2 hours playing cards or something, I look around and I love to see people talking to each other, and they're all like-minded people. So that's part of the pleasure of working at a company like ours, is that you can speak to people and learn things just by chatting. So that's one of the principles that we've kind of based our teams on, and something we highly encourage.
I love that. It's the, communication, collaboration, some of those positive collisions. And, we too are looking forward to, the world being a bit safer, so that we can have that open working space in our new location, where we're going from a lot of little offices as well to some wide open with staff and incubating companies. And we're giddy. We can't wait to be there. And we know the power of that connection to one another, and being able to hustle towards, the things that we are achieving. So I love that you've shared that. And certainly that's a vision that we have. Anna, is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
I love what Mike said, and I think that that's kind of the spice of life, right? Like the thing that people may quote unquote do for a living, or the education that they have, is only one piece of the puzzle. Kind of the other things that they know, I'm always just gobsmacked with some of the things. Like I said to one of our co-ops, can you visualize this thing for me? And you do it. I don't want to tell you how to do it. And she kind of quietly put up her hand and said, I know how to do stop motion video. Would that be okay? I was like, you know how to do what? Yes, that would be amazing. So just knowing that about other people, and however you facilitate them kind of getting to know one another. I know we're launching a new program inside Sun Life that I'm really excited about, called Gigs. And it's just people can kind of sign up for things that they're passionate about that may not be part of their day job. And it's like match.com inside the organization to say, go work with other people and go learn about what other business units are doing. Because A, you're going to help them, but B, to the system thinking idea, you're going to get a better perspective on what else is going on in the business. So it's very cool to see at a big, 30,000 person behemoth Titanic company, we too are seeing the same kind of trends and want to give that to our staff. So I'm always heartened when, people get to do things that either they don't do for a living, they didn't think they could, or get to work with people. And then learn about a whole world and have empathy for that world too, right? Like it's very easy to kind of sit at your desk and say, man, that other team's not doing their job, as opposed to thinking, what is causing it to be so hard for my colleagues who are talented, smart individuals to do this thing? And oftentimes when you go understand their world, you kind of go, oh, it's not as easy as I thought. It's actually hard. And maybe there's a way that like we can help.
Awesome. So then when we think of sort of transformation, the effect of transformation, can you comment, Mike, on how you have worked through or dealt with the effect of transformation on culture and people from an HR perspective? I think you've given some really good examples. Is there anything more that you would like to add to that specific to this particular question?
Just from my perspective, I have a big problem with top-down transformation, and I understand that from time to time it's necessary, but it really requires a high degree of connectivity between all the parts when you've got, for example, the leadership stepping in and saying, okay, you guys have been doing things pretty good this way, but now we're going to do something different, or we're going to change a goal, or we're going to realign you with something else, especially to highly specialized people who have been succeeding and have been trained for years and doing things successfully in a certain sort of way. And it's something I really almost never do. And whenever you have to, I feel very trepidatious about it. It's always better to have a dialogue with the people when there are opportunities to have those discussions and let the ideas on how to take advantage of whatever opportunity or how to deal with whatever threat that you may be facing bubble up from below, and then you can really get a gauge on how your organization will be able to take on that transformation, as opposed to, let's say the genius mastermind who's going to say, okay, now we're going to do things differently, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and then somehow try and coordinate all of those parts through all of the chaos through that transition. I know it happens. I know people do it, and some people do it really well. I don't think I could ever be that, and I don't know too many people who could do it well. So that would be my experience and my advice.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to shift gears here. Back over to you, Anna. So typical enterprise product management is waterfall and slow sometimes, and can be perceived to be de-risked. But what about the risk of time? If big companies want to partner or acquire some of the innovation that they seek, how do you balance the traditional culture that may not be broken, so to speak, the traditional culture with an agile culture and contemporary methodology? What are some of your recommendations there?
I think it's hard, which is why people struggle with it. I think there's real corralling factors when you have a mainframe as your system of record and you do 5 releases a year. It's kind of fun to buy fun furniture. It's fun to say, yay, everyone's going to do sprints. But if really the reality is you have limited windows, you got to try to figure out how to balance those things. And I think when you kind of have grown up in a company that that never really values the risk of time. I think kind of Mike kind of lived it. And in my previous life, Jim Balsley used to tell us, like, don't expect to take any vacation this summer because while everyone's at the beach, we're going to be working. So, to try have that urgency, it's once you kind of have that urgency DNA, it's hard to unlearn it, and you kind of beat your head against the wall when you're on more of a slow roll. But I think even the most conservative of companies at some point need to sit down and say, what's the cost of time? What opportunities are we missing out on? Because sometimes these experiments are a few weeks and tens of thousands of dollars in an organization that takes years and spends millions of dollars to kind of get to the same outcome. So sometimes appealing to a very senior leader's desire for an outcome, to say, we could take the next 3 years and know that there's always inherent risk in a project that's that long and lengthy. Why don't we, break off this little piece, try to do this little piece well? And, sometimes the thing that's worked for me is to say, and once we figure it out, we will absolutely go back to your big ceremonial process. But the truth is, when you kind of prove to them that you can do it better, faster, cheaper, more often than not, that same leader goes, no, 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 we don't want to waste the time building all the PowerPoints and going, let's just keep chipping away at it and keep getting wins. And over the 3 years, we're probably going to be farther ahead than we would have been had we been very structured about it. And I just kind of smile my devilish grin and I'm like, okay, good. But it's hard. It's hard to balance. And it's until people, I think, if they've kind of grown up one way, until you personally de-risk it for them, either as a leader or as an employee, it's hard because it's scary. If you know one way to do it and you don't know the results of a different way, it's hard to take the leap of faith. So the more, I think, if that's your passion wherever you work, try to figure out a way to de-risk it for the person that you're kind of pitching it to or selling it to make them feel comfortable. And you might be surprised that they kind of let you experiment a little more than maybe you'd expected.
That's terrific. Thank you. And the concept of de-risking, both perhaps for the leader and the people, and really, quite frankly, across the spectrum, all decision makers. And when you're able to chip away or get to the root of the worry, perhaps that de-risking and demonstrating how things can be done by iteration or by smaller chunks really does move a project or a process forward more quickly, less time wasted, less cost involved. Great. Okay, so Mike, over to you with, sometimes transformation is often in response to threats or opportunities, but should ideally be through some iteration. Can you speak to this idea?
Yeah, I think that iteration for me is key to the I would say the evolution of an organization. That regardless of what industry you're in or what you're doing, you're constantly delivering a product or a service. You're getting metrics back about how well that's being that's being accepted, or how well you're performing. That you need to take a look at how well you're doing and using those metrics. And especially now in the digital world, those metrics are coming at you faster and easier than ever. Before, you kind of had to possibly dig a little harder to know how your customers perceive you. Now, depending on what you're doing, that information is relatively readily available. And I think that's for me, the part of transformation that's the most important, is that you always have to be reconciling what you're doing against what your business environment is. And if you're like most companies, your business environment is changing and it's evolving, and there's a big change this year in terms of the way that environment is. So I would say iteration based on data has to be a very, very important part of how you react. Now, I'm qualify that by saying, don't be a data-driven company, because there's been a lot of chat about that over the last few years. And I think there's been some articles saying, if you're going to use your last, yearly results or financials or to drive all of your new business information or your new strategy, don't let it drive your strategy. Let it drive your tactics, but be aware of it and use it well. So that's a terrible answer, but
that's awesome. I feel like it actually sparks even more dialogue, because we often do hear data-driven decision-making, but the decision-making is really attached to the tactical pieces, not necessarily the strategy. And I can't help but think that you probably want to jump in on this as well. I've had a dog bust in on this webcast, and we've seen children in the background. So what I love is that this is a really normal experience for all of us. So any chance you want to jump in on what Mike was talking about for data-driven iteration and decision-making as it relates to tactics and strategy?
I love what Mike said, and I don't think it was a horrible answer at all, because my experience has been, data-informed decision-making, if it's like lily white and pure, if we actually don't have a preconceived answer in mind and we're going to look at the data and try to make a decision, great. But more often than not, the decision's kind of already been made, and the assignment is go look at the data and go justify the thing that I already told you I want to do based on the information you can pull. And that's when it becomes a little disingenuous. What's the expression, stats, lies and stats or whatever. I mean, you can kind of make the data look any which way you want. So just the intellectual honesty of, if it's a data-driven decision, that you're kind of going into it to look at the data, not to confirm your own outcome that you're trying to drive towards.
And couple that with things like customer experience, user experience, like what are you catching in market? What is your competitive intelligence sharing with you? How is that supported by the data? And again, you could spin the story one way or the other, but when you're thinking of transformation, make sure you're having that honest gut check and speaking with others about, this is the way we're viewing it. Are we looking at it from the wrong lens? And in what ways do we need to change? So transformation is good use of the time of our company, and it puts us in the spot where we're either going to continue to excel, grow revenue, expand, whatnot. But it's a great point that's been made about data, and I feel like it comes up very often, in roles that I've had, when the data tells you and you can read the tea leaves, that's one thing, but it's how is this influenced by already made decisions, or how will this actually influence a change in transformation? So that's terrific. That kind of brings us to the end of some of our more formal questions. We've had a few questions in the chat as well. So I think I'd like to take us into a little bit of fun with our rapid fire session. So we're looking for answers a couple of words or less. Do you think that you can do it if I fire some questions your way? Are you both ready for this? Awesome. Okay. So Mike, I'm going to start with you. And then Anna, I'll go to you for the same question, and we'll do that for a bit, and then we'll switch it up and Anna can go first. And that way, we share some of the pressure of first mover. So Mike, what is the top lesson learned or a key takeaway during COVID?
I would say to have an open mind.
Okay. Anna?
It's showing us the things in a very rapid way that we needed to fix for a long time. It's just put it in crystal clear focus.
Yeah. Okay, so Mike, what's been the hardest thing to adapt to?
Becoming a parent.
Awesome. Okay, Anna?
I think I was thinking of it through in recent terms, the idea of needing to be compliant to processes that never anticipated this new world. So trying to navigate this new normal as we try to adjust.
Okay. So Anna, I'm going to start with you on this question then. So what's the best tool to stay connected?
Oh, my damn phone. It's sad, but true.
It's true. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, that's my answer.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I love it and I hate it, but I mostly hate it.
Oh yeah, I hear you. It's a way we're connected to everything, whether that be work or family and friends. Okay, so Anna, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Definitely wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay, yes. Mike, how about you?
I never really knew. I studied engineering when I was at school, but I almost immediately knew I didn't want to be an engineer. So I still don't have an answer for that.
I think that's the common answer for so many people. What do you mean? Why do we have to grow up? Why do we have to choose? Can't we continue to explore? That's awesome. Okay, so Mike, what oceans or mountains?
Sometimes it's oceans, sometimes it's mountains. Now it looks like a mountain.
Okay. Anna? Ocean
always mountains.
Okay, wow. Mike, wine or beer?
I'll take both. Willingly.
Awesome. Anna?
Wine, and where I am now, it's just called white wine. There's no varietals. It's just white. Take it or leave it. And so I've just been taking it.
Got a girl. Okay, so Anna, book or podcast?
Right now, I'm reading a book about the greatest generation around when government was good. And so book, always. I'm a voracious reader, have been since I was a child.
Amazing. Mike, how about you?
It's a book for me. I've never really gotten into podcasts. I just haven't done it.
Any good book recommendations?
I don't have any recommendations right now. I'm reading some Quebec literature for fun, just to keep my mind off of things.
Cool. Okay, and then sort of rapid fire question, but doesn't have to be. Final words of advice for those who have tuned in and those who will watch the webcast or our fireside chat after today. Anna, why don't you start?
I just think seize the moment. I think there's never been a better opportunity to kind of change your world outlook or what you're doing. So whatever uniqueness that you offer, seize it, and go seek people that want to affect the same change you want to in the world.
Terrific, thank you.
For me, I would say be flexible, have an open mind, speak to people, make sure you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid.
Wow, okay, good. Well, I mean, I want to offer my sincere thanks to both of you for joining us today, Mike and Anna, and the preparation that certainly goes into having a fireside chat just like the one that we've had. And we are very privileged to have both of you on our board of directors at TechAlliance, and really to excel through uncertainty and these changing times, whether the new normal is really a transformation for all of us to change the way that we operate and the way that we engage. The conversation we've had today has been really thrilling. I love the fact that you've both talked about resiliency and connecting with others and being flexible and positive and prepared. And so thank you for sharing that insight for all of us and how to best go about transformation with these tenets in our mind of the capabilities of everybody. So this actually concludes our Fireside Chat Summer Series with our Board of Directors for the summer. And we encourage everyone to continue to tap into ongoing expert advice that's offered through TechAlliance, things like our peer-to-peer groups, other webcasts and experiences that we'll be hosting over the summer and into the fall. And that felt like a bit of a commercial, but I feel very obliged to do so, just to make sure that we keep people connected following this Fireside Chat series. And again, thanks, Anna and Mike. It has been amazing. And for everyone who has joined us today, have an incredible day, be well, and take good care.